Welcome to the 6th episode of the HiFi Five. I'm Ron Resnick, your moderator. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can keep doing these shows for you. Our regulars are Jay Caceres of Jay's Audio Lab, Elliot Goldman of Bending Wave USA, and Danny Kaey of Sonic Flare and EMMLabs. Our guest today is Dennis Berger, Senior Editor of SoundStage. Dennis, welcome.
Hello. Thanks so much, Ron. I appreciate you having me, man.
Our guest today is Dennis Berger, Senior Editor. Tell us briefly about your background in audio and your perspective on the hobby.
Okay, cool. Is that me doing the echo, or who's echoing here? I want to make sure it's not me. My audio, I can hear you repeating yourself like 5 seconds after. So if it's me, I'm sorry. Tell me to shush. But background in audio. Well, like I was telling you guys before we started, I think my obsession with audio started when I was a kid, and my parents took me to Circuit City to shop for a refrigerator. And, you know, like any kid at Circuit City with his parents, I did not want to hang out with them. So I started wandering around, and I went into the audio section and saw these gigantic Martin Logan electrostats. And I was like, what is that? Right. And that started the passion, just because music has always been like, you know, something I was borderline obsessed with. And that pushed it over the border. And I've just been chasing great sound ever since. I mean, I'm just one of these crazy true believers who legitimately think the world would be a better place if we all had better hi-fi, man. So,
okay, let's get right to it. Do you believe that everything we hear from our audio components can be measured objectively?
Wow, that's a good question. I think pretty much everything that matters can, or at the very least, I will say everything that is going to matter to the vast majority of people, I believe, is measurable in some way, shape, or form. And now I'm going to get into weird territory here where if Brent Butterworth, my podcasting co-host, is watching this, he's going to be like, that's not exactly true. Because, I mean, I believe things like, you know, certain volume control topologies can have an effect on the quality of the sound. And I'm like, yeah, how would you test that? I don't really know. I mean, there are measurements that you could do, sure, and at SoundStage we do certain measurements that affect that. I guess what I would say in the end is, if I am going to recommend someone buy a piece of equipment based on criteria that I'm hearing, I want to make sure it's something that can be measurable, because that's my biggest thing. Measurements are sanity check. They're a way to keep us honest. They're a way to keep us from falling prey to our own biases and preconceptions.
Okay, so if everything that matters can be measured, that's what you said. If everything that matters can be measured, how do you measure on a frequency analyzer or an oscilloscope depth of soundstage or transparency or what I call breath of life? Those things certainly matter to me subjectively, sonically. How do you measure those things?
Some of those things, Ron, I just don't know what they mean. But like depths of soundstage to me, I mean, if you're going to look at transient response, that could affect depths of soundstage. If you're going to look at driver to driver consistency and cabinet to cabinet consistency, if you're going to look at the whether or not changing your volume control causes an imbalance, in the left-right balance of the audio, that can affect soundstage width and depth and things like that. So I don't think it's necessarily one specific measurement, but I think all of the things that contribute to those subjective perceptual things can in one way, shape, or form be measured. I do.
Danny?
Look, I think it's the as Mike Levine has said, the abyss is staring at you. You know, it's easy to get lost in all these conversations. And I think one of the fundamental problems that this industry has, unfortunately, is that there are not many actual scientists that are asked to participate in shows like ours or similar shows who would actually be capable of answering that question for you, Ron, very succinctly. Am I a scientist? Is Dennis a scientist? No. Is any one of us a scientist? No. But why don't we get a guy like Floyd Toole on the show and have him answer that question? Floyd Toole spent his career at Harman. He's an engineer. He's an actual engineer. He studied psychoacoustics, and he's been involved in psychoacoustics forever and a half. He would probably be a good guy to get on the show and answer that very question for you. Because here, look, at the end of the day, what I do know is sound is basically fundamentally based on wave propagation. And the two core factors of wave propagation are sound pressure and velocity, and air velocity, right? And between those two, you can certainly measure a whole bunch of things that, audiophiles love to talk about that are this abstract, SoundStage, warm or cold, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, look, I'm not trying to skin a cat 6 ways here. I'm just saying that I think the fundamental principle is that marketing, in my opinion, has completely overtaken any substantive, scientifically accurate analysis in how we perceive sound. And that's that.
My view is that not everything that can be measured matters, and not everything that matters sonically can be measured. Elliot, go ahead.
Well, I totally agree with that. I think that, and I would ask all of you, do you believe that everything we know is measurable? And I don't think so. Okay. I think that there's a lot of things in audio that.
But okay, Elliot, what are you referring to? Everything that is measurable?
Okay, like
specific to audio or in general?
You sat at a show with me over the weekend, and we had amazing sound. Okay.
Yep.
And if we took that same stuff and put it in every room with somebody else setting it up, it would sound different in all of them. It's not measurable. Okay. Maybe the room is measurable, but the other stuff is measurable. I don't know. I assume, Dennis, that I'm not trying to start a fight, that you're a cable denier. Okay. That a wire is a wire, and it should all be the same, and it shouldn't make any difference because you're passing 120 volts from one end to the other through a plug. Okay. But
if you're talking about a power cord,
let me finish, please. I read what you wrote. Okay. And you basically made fun of Jim Austin, and you gave two possible opportunities that either basically he lost his mind or he's full of shit. And I don't think either one of them is the only two answers that exist. I would be more than happy to invite you to my showroom, and I'll be more than happy to plug and unplug power cords. And I am really sure, unless you have some kind of brain anomaly and your hearing is damaged, that you will hear a difference. Now, whether you like it, I can't tell you, but I believe the flat earth theory that nothing is that unmeasurable is workable is total hokum.
Let's let Dennis respond, and then we'll go to Jay.
So with regard to the power cords, I have said before on my own podcast with Brent Butterworth, I do believe that a power cable could potentially make a difference. But if it does make a difference, it's doing something wrong. Like if it is in some way, shape, or form limiting current, that is going to potentially affect your amplifier's ability to deliver sufficient current to sort of push through the impedance dips of your speakers. So yeah, a power cord could conceivably make a difference. But like, I don't know, $35, $45, standard power cable that you could buy off of Amazon.
I got to come back at you. There are people like Kaylin Gabriel, who I think is really brilliant, that have done a tremendous amount of work in power cords, and their stuff is exceptional. And I'm not saying he's the only one. There are plenty of them, but all the high-end all the high-end cable manufacturers and power guys would totally disagree with you. And some of them are engineers. Not all of them.
But that's an appeal for authority.
Hang on, Dennis. Dennis, let me just get Jay in here. Go ahead, Jay.
Sure.
Well, I have to say that in my experience, of course, yes, all cables have made a difference. Power cords being the first entry point actually into the system. Delivery of electricity starts out of the first power cord, right? That plugs into the outlet. So it all starts there. And I have to be pretty honest here. And I know you cannot measure whatever it is doing. You can't measure the added bass. You can't measure the added soundstage. I understand all of those things, but I can comprehend in a way why some engineers are always going to be refuting that point of view, because they're not thinking from an audiophile's perspective. It's a different type of thought. Even from building your rooms and the way I'm doing my rooms, a lot of engineers would say it breaks code. It's not up to code. So I understand it. I will say that I will question actually Dennis to understand his current system. I don't think the audience knows, like, what do you use to review your equipment with, or whatever it is that you review. Because a lot of times, and I'm not saying this is the case with you, Dennis, but a lot of the reviewers out there, unfortunately, in my opinion, of course, don't really have the necessary equipment to conduct the proper evaluations.
Just one question, Jay. Sorry, Dennis. Jay, do you sell power cords?
I do sell power cords, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Dennis, go ahead.
So, I mean, if you want to know about my reference system, I'd be happy to tell you, because I think it's great stuff. Now, it's not, right now I'm writing for a budget audio file website. So I'm tailoring my reference gear to that specifically. I'm using an NAD C3050 integrated amplifier, which I think is great. I'm using Paradigm Studio 100 V5 speakers. I've got much more expensive speakers that I could be using, but I think Studio 100 V5s are amazing, and I think they fit my budget range. Probably the most expensive stuff in my system right now, this is going to shock you, is the Surge-X power gear. Just because, look, man, I think the series mode surge elimination stuff is important, and I live in Alabama. I get hit by lightning a lot. I want good power protection. But my question would be, like, what kind of gear would I need to be able to hear the difference between two audio cables? And here's the bigger question, though, Jay. Like, I think you and I would agree on something. You say you can hear this stuff. Elliot, you said, no question about it, you can hear this stuff. But Elliot, you said something I want to latch onto and ask you a question and ask you to be willing to modify this, because I think you would. I think you would agree to these testing terms, right? Would you let a third party switch the cables? You don't know which cable's in place. You and I sit there not knowing which cable is which, and you believe, well, they're going to sound different. I believe, well, if they sound different, one of them's not doing something right. But I think you and I would both be willing to do that test, a legitimately controlled double-blind test where neither of us knows the conditions and the people who are doing the switching don't have skin in the game. I think you would say, yeah, let's do the test. Jay, I think you would say, yeah, let's do the test. So I don't have a beef with any of you. The people I have a beef with are the ones who would start making excuses going, whoa, wait a minute now. Blind testing has got all of these problems, but you guys sound so legitimate and so sincere in your beliefs that I think you would submit to that test. And I would too. And I think it's going to come out one way and you think it's going to come out another, you know?
Blind testing, legitimate way to evaluate components or not, gentlemen?
For me, look, I think people believe what they want to believe. Being somebody that spends an inordinate amount of time on setup, and I think does a very good job of it, I know what my system sounds like. And I've said this online a million times. I don't go looking for stuff. It basically finds me. If someone I know who I respect recommends something to me, I throw it in my system, leave it there for a few days, and I listen to it. And I know pretty much instantly whether I prefer it or I don't prefer it. I'm not in the A/B testing thing. That's, I did that a long time ago. I find all of that boring. I'm not against doing what Dennis suggests, but I don't think that's really the whole thing. I think that, some of the stuff that I read here about kayfabe and whatever, I'll just talk about it. I do not believe that all audiophiles hear the same. In fact, I don't believe that most of them know how to listen at all. Okay, that's not all of them. I don't know what the number is, but I agree with some of the stuff that Dennis said, that there's this group think because we've gone through this stuff where, we have these arguments all the time. Well, everybody hears differently. I don't agree with that. Okay. I believe that listening is a learned skill, just like wine tasting or food tasting, or, if you want to become, what do they call those? The wine guys, the sommelier.
Sommelier.
Yeah. Sommelier goes through these incredible tests to learn to taste for specific nodes and things. I grew up with people that taught me how to listen, not how to hear. Nobody had to teach me how to hear. My mother taught me how to not listen, but other people taught me to listen. And I think that when I walk around stores or shows or go to different people's houses, okay, it's hard for me to believe that we all have the same hearing, because we don't. Okay. I went around CapFest. I only listened to a few rooms, and I love to read the reviews of the show when and if they come out. When people tell me stuff that was absolute horseshit, was wonderful. Okay. So I know that these people do not know how to listen. Are they entitled to like?
Elliot, Dennis is raising the question of testing. Danny, does double-blind testing miss some nuances that we learn over the?
Give me a second, Ron. Calm down. We'll get to your question. Hang on a second. I'll make another proposition for you guys, kind of in conjunction with what Dennis just suggested, which is to say that have any of you guys recently taken an audio test by an audiologist to map your ears out, what you can hear?
Yeah, the new AirPods do that for you for $149.
Would you allow me to share my screen? I have my test up that I want to show you guys.
Still not the same subject.
Positive or negative?
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something that I've been talking about since this feature became available on AirPods and iPhone, I want to say just about a year ago, with the previous iOS update, and the previous generation AirPods, and the new generation doesn't look any different. This is my hearing test. Okay. This is an audiologist affirmed medical grade test that Apple performs with your AirPods. This is what I hear, or rather cannot hear. Okay. So as you guys can see, based on what my findings are, I am well within range of my age group and where I fall within the test parameters of hearing loss. Okay. To give you an example of this, as you clearly can see, once I get to about 2K, it starts to fall dramatically, right? Once I get to about 8K, it falls even further off the tube. Okay. We have a dryer and a washer in our house. My wife is 2 years younger than me. She has nearly perfect hearing. She took this test. She has a nearly flat frequency response, and she can hear the beeper that the washer dryer lets go once something is done. I, for the life of me, cannot hear it. Why can I not hear it? Because guess what? I can't hear it. My hearing is not going to reveal that frequency range of that beeper to my ears. Case closed. Post your frequency response. Let's have a conversation.
I mean, think it should be every audio reviewer should have to put their audiogram at the end of their and look,
it's a hearing test, gentlemen, not a listening test. It's a hearing test, not a listening test.
But here's the thing that I would say to you, Elliot. Here's the thing I wanted to respond to you with. I am out here making purchasing recommendations for people. I take that very, very seriously. I don't want to steer anybody wrong with regard to how they're spending their money. But I I think the easiest person in the world to fool is yourself. And I mean that very personally. The person that I am most able to fool is me. And also, I think with regard to music, our emotions automatically get engaged. There are certain songs that I will not use as reference test material in reviews because I don't care what I'm reviewing. That song is going to be the most gorgeous thing I've ever heard in my life. To me, that emotional engagement impairs my ability to give someone good recommendations for how to spend their money. So when you're talking about, oh, I know how to listen, I know what I'm hearing. Look, I can't say whether you can or not, right? All I can speak for is myself and my own biases and my own ability to convince myself that I am hearing something that I am not. And so all of this reliance on objectivity, all of the reliance on measurements, all of the proselytizing for double-blind testing and things like that, I worry that you're viewing it as an attack on you. I'm reviewing it. I'm considering it a safeguard against my own emotional bias with regard to what I'm hearing when I listen to a system, because I do doubt my own ability to be objective. So
I don't perceive it as an attack on subjectivist hearing. I just ask the question, are there some subtle things that can appear during a longer time frame that are not apparent during quick A/B or A blind testing?
I would say so.
Maybe, but here's my question. If you want to fall back on Karl Popper, how would we falsify that? If you can't falsify it, then I don't think I have any business standing behind it when I'm making purchasing recommendations. Right?
Jay, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that there is a time lapse that needs to occur between your brain and your ears. When you first sit down, right, you have to reach that level of calmness and relaxation to actually enter the music, to actually listen for everything that it's telling you. When you first sit down, you're still agitated. You could have been going up a flight of stairs. You just sat down. You don't really click with the music. You're not really identifying everything that you're hearing yet. So I do believe there is a difference between doing a quick in and out A/B comparison and one that's more control, where you can actually go back in, take a break, return, and then it's like living with equipment. You really don't know a piece of gear unless you live with it. That's the
an
only way in
essential
which you
part
can
of any
say.
review for me.
Right.
That is an essential
Agreed.
part of any review. But
Yeah.
the measurements have to be a sanity check, and I think ultimately, So here's a point that I would raise to that. It's true, like you sit down in front of a good hi-fi system, it brings your pulse down, it brings your blood pressure down. You literally have a physiological reaction to your sound system, right? But the thing about it is, if everybody in a blind test is in the same, headspace or whatever, right, you're going to get consistent results, and you're going to, I think the big things that matter, the things that we should be really focusing our money on, the things that we can say, yes, this makes a difference here. This definitely, I don't know, man, I'm not sure, right? I think you can make those determinations really quick. I don't think your blood pressure has to be down. I don't think your pulse rate has to be down. Yes, in terms of a long-term subjective evaluation, here is my overall experience with this piece of gear. You and I are 100% in agreement, but I still think I, as a human, relating those experiences to my readers, I am fallible and I could be swayed by my own biases. So my question to you would be, how do we reliably take that out of the equation? How do I reliably take my emotional engagement? Like if a piece of gear has VU meters, or if a piece of gear has just a volume control that feels like a 3,000-pound anvil gliding effortlessly across ice, and I'm just like, oh, this is the best thing in the world, man. How do I take my emotional reaction to that out of the equation when I'm trying to let someone know, okay, what is your actual experience with this going to be, and how can I verify that for you to the best of my ability?
So two follow-ups on that, Dennis. You bring up a great point, the emotional connection, and then on the other side, or I should say juxtaposed to that 180 degrees, is the reliability of the actual psychoacoustic phenomenon that allows us to perceive sound in first place, right? And the two are not necessarily often related. To your point, the emotional connection of, hey, this is a gorgeous looking piece of gear. I always said it forever and a half. We listen with our eyes oftentimes. Or the haptic feel of a component. You press a button and it's like, oh my God, I just touched, who knows what. All those things fool our minds, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I believe that you will hear what you want to hear, right? And, on the other hand, you've got the emotional connection to music, right? And one of the things I wanted to ask you when you were describing your system, your reference system, does it make music?
Well,
right?
It delivers music that other people made. I mean, it's like it can't play my guitars, man. But
right, but do you have a connection with the music?
God, yeah.
Absolutely. That's what counts. And I don't care if it's a freaking, $1,000 NAD receiver, which I'm sure is very well engineered, by the way.
Yeah.
Or if it's $100,000 pair of amps or a $50,000 pair of speakers, you have that emotional connection to music. And I think ultimately that's what the dividing line is, right? And I think all of the other accolades, if you want to call them accolades, that come with listening to music, lowering your pulse rate, creating a regenerative balance in your mind. And by the way, those are all scientific, to use that term. I'm wearing my alma mater shirt here, just to put that out there. Those are all scientifically verified data points.
Okay, but the question,
what music does to you and to your mind.
But the question, Danny, is yes, you can be emotionally engaged with a modest system. The question is, does a more expensive system achieve a greater level of emotional engagement? Now, Dennis, I understand you've been enjoying your turntable, the U-turn orbit theory, for about $1,000. Do you believe that if you were to perhaps use a more expensive cartridge that you might prefer, a more stable turntable, do you think that by putting additional money into a turntable playback system, you might actually achieve a greater level of emotional connection and enjoyment? Or do you think there's diminishing return sets in very rapidly?
Well, I think the transducer is always the most important thing. If you're going to spend more money on something, spend more money on your transducer. So you're asking me about a phono cartridge? Oh, yeah. Like I wish I could afford the Ortofon 2M Black, I think it is. I got the blue and it sounds great, but I auditioned the black and I was like, ooh, just in terms of frequency response and channel separation, yeah, God, that's better. Can I justify the difference in expense? I can't. With regard to electronics, I think diminishing returns kick in a lot faster. So transducers, I say spend as much money as you can. Electronics, you can. I mean, it's like I have before. I love Anthem gear. I rocked an Anthem D2V in my home theater for a long, long time. But does it sound significantly better than today's modern, Marantz separates that sell for a fraction of the price? No. Not really. So transducers, man, I'm going to spend every single dollar I can on a transducer, be it a speaker or headphones or a phono cartridge or anything. Electronics, not so much. Typically, I'm going to be more swayed by aesthetics, features, ergonomics, and my just sort of gut emotional reaction. And also just, does it have a competent power supply? Because so many of the more expensive electronics that I've purchased had less competent power supplies than the much more affordable electronics.
Well, hold on, wait a minute. So you're saying you spend less on your electronics, more on the loudspeakers. So my question to you is, how are you supposed to be hearing and capturing the differences between all these power cords if your electronics are not up to snuff? And I'll give you a perfect example. I mean, a lot of reviewers love to use laptops to evaluate gear, and and I'm not going to knock it. I mean, it does the job. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But if I went out there and grabbed a $10,000 power cord and plugged it into the power supply of that laptop, that square box, it ain't going to make a difference. It's not going to make it sound better. It's not going to make the display look better. It's not going to give me 8K resolution. Power cords are based on you having really good equipment as well, not just average gear. You can't turn, a turd into a diamond. It's impossible. Like it's a turd. You know what I'm saying? So no one is talking about this shit. No one is
wait
saying.
A second, Jay.
What does that mean, though?
But wait a second, Jay. Hang on a second. If the power cord can impact your $10,000 amp, but it can't impact a $2,000 amp, then I kind of have to question what's up with this power cord.
Because here's the thing that I think, and by the way, I think brands are also guilty of this. These brands that are building these cables are guilty of this, but they do it because they don't want to say they shouldn't say you have to have a quality amplifier or preamplifier for you to hear the difference. Else, basically, you are eliminating a lot of people that could potentially buy these expensive cables. Okay, so it's not in their best benefit to make such statements. But the reality is that if you're buying a $10,000 cable, you should have quality electronics. You're not going to buy a Porsche and buy freaking Korean Chinese tires.
But who's the arbiter of the price point of that cable? I mean, who claims that cable is worth $10,000?
I mean, that's MSRP. It's a number that I landed at. I'm just saying.
Okay, so
But my bigger question would be
something. The price of something is not necessarily a determinant of quality. Okay, another thing that was in this article, and I'd love to change this because I'm totally bored of this conversation and don't dig it at all. The fact is that there is a lot of groupthink in audio. I happen to agree with it. Okay. But I think it all comes back to, again, what I said before about hearing and listening. The price of a component does not necessarily mean that it is better. Okay. It only means it's more expensive. Okay. And it could be more expensive for lots of reasons, whether it's imported, whether it's made out of different materials, whether the materials are more expensive. Maybe it comes in a fancy ass box. Maybe they got a hot chick in the ad. Okay. Maybe they have expensive real estate. Okay. There's a lot of things that go into the price of a product. Okay. Not all of them determine the quality of said product. The other part, which Dennis mentioned in his thing, okay, with his kayfabe shit and all the rest of it, is there is groupthink. There are people that buy stuff based on price and looks. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is true in every industry. There are people in the audio industry to go, well, it's 300,000. It's got to be twice as good as the thing for 150,000. Okay. A lot of that goes back to, in my opinion, that this industry has done a very poor job in teaching people what they should look for and what they shouldn't look for. And I'm not a test numbers guy. I'm sorry. I deal with a lot of good companies and I have a lot of serious engineers. And these things are parameters which they work in. Okay. Obviously, they can help eliminate really gross mistakes. You know, if you have a thing like this in a frequency response or a problem with a crossover or a resonant peak in a box or a phase anomaly. But at the end of the day, there is science in audio and there is art. And to say that there is no art in audio, okay, because I'm an artist. What I do is art. It's not science. Okay, I use some science to set up a system. But what I'm really doing is art. It's experience and going to do something and understanding what the result is. And you can say, okay, he doesn't know what he's doing and he's an asshole. And I understand that. People have all that stuff. But the overwhelming majority of stuff on the market, the product, is much better than the results of what people do with the product.
I wanted to follow up on something with Jay real quick, because when I misunderstand people, it bothers me, and I especially don't want to go down a road where I'm like misrepresenting what you're saying. So I want to be clear on one point, because also, you know, we have different passions and different areas of interest, so we may interpret things differently. So when I hear what you're saying about, you need truly world-class, gear to evaluate the more expensive power cables. To me, the way I would interpret that, and this is what I want you to clarify for me if I'm misunderstanding you, you're saying that only the world-class gear can only have linear power supplies. And do you see any?
No.
Okay, so the point that I would ask for you for clarification on is like, with a linear power supply, okay, I could start to understand your argument, but like with a switching power supply, what is I'm going to use the number you threw out, the $10,000 power cable. What is it going to do differently with again, linear power supply? I get it. With a switching power supply, what is it going to do differently that's going to make the difference in terms of whatever that product is putting out?
I'll give you an example. Solution gear. A lot of the solution gear that I have is switch mode power supply nowadays. So is Constellation now on their latest version of electronics.
So does
and I can tell you,
EMMLabs.
yep, and EMMLabs power cords. I don't know how they enter, and that's probably for an engineer to discuss deeper, higher, above my pay grade. But I'm telling you, I'm hearing a difference. More, everything is just better. It sorts things out better. The stage is better sorted. There's less diffused of a feeling. There's less scrambling effect, if that makes sense. And by the way, when I mention more expensive gear, I don't mean in the term of like it has to be $1 million. It doesn't have to cost the same as a house. But I meant in terms of the transparency of such components. If I grab $1,000 critical mass footage right now and put it under my laptop to see if it sounds better, it won't sound any better. Even though I'm using it as a music server, it's not going to sound better because I put it under footers. But if I grab a music server, a render, Tyco, and put footers under it, it will change the way music sounds. So it's no different with power chords. And I know we're very focused on power chords, but I want to say that this translates to just about anything when it comes to a system, footers, stands, I mean, everything. The list goes on and on and on.
Shall we take a viewer question?
Sure, please. Pick one. What about cable risers?
Is it true that only a recording engineer can confirm if a hi-fi system is putting out better musical accuracy?
What? Why would a recording engineer be able to do that?
Well, presumably because he or she's in the studio.
If you've ever been in a recording studios are set up to listen for error, okay? That's what they do. They're sitting there near field with these monitors, and Danny's playing the guitar, and they're listening for errors and pitch mistakes or whatever else it is. All of that stuff is done and then mixed and remixed and remixed, okay? Musicians generally and recording engineers are some of the worst hi-fi listeners that I've ever met.
That's true.
They're on stage. We're not on stage. We're sitting in front of the stage, okay?
By the way, we did have Dave Chesky come into our room on Sunday.
Yes.
And he played his latest generation of recordings that he did over the last year or two. They were absolutely spectacular. I mean,
David Chesky is also an audiophile. Right. David Chesky thought we had the best system at the show.
Right. I know. I agree with you.
There's another question there that someone was asking. KVH57.
I'm not saying all recording engineers, but like when I worked in New York City, we had guys that came to the shop and bought stuff. And then there are other guys that just put gadgets and phase shifters and all kinds of other stuff in the recordings to make it sound a certain way. Okay, that's why every recording doesn't sound the same.
Efficacy of tweaks like cable risers, fuses, network switches, audiophile woo-woo.
Well, I think
if you take audiophile crystals and sit on them, they might change your listening experience.
If you in your head believe that these things make a difference, then they'll make a difference. Is there any scientific basis on them making a difference? That's a whole different question.
I'm going to say, though, if you think network switches can make a difference, you don't understand how packetized data works. And this is one of the reasons that I got so angry about network switches in the article that I'm writing, because it takes it to design a network switch. You have to understand how packetized data works. If you understand how packetized data works, there's no way you could believe in the concept of an audiophile network switch.
Let
So
me ask you a question.
got to be some inherent dishonesty there. And that's the one time when I'm going to go out on a limb and go, no, somebody's like, I'm almost certain somebody's lying here. I don't like to accuse people of lying, but you could not possibly design a network switch that worked if you believed that audiophile network switches were a thing. You just couldn't.
Well, audiophile network switches definitely are a thing. People can spend tens of thousands of dollars for them. So are you saying they're just completely deluding themselves?
Yeah, I really am. Okay. That's the one time where I'm going to be like, yep, no,
okay.
These people are making crap.
Well, I want to ask Dennis, I want to ask you a question. Sure. I don't want to argue with you. Do you believe that there is noise that's generated on network cable?
Sure, of course I do.
So
why would I not believe that? I used to be the head of IT for the regional head of IT for the largest civil engineering firm in the world. Yes,
okay,
you could have noise.
I just want to ask a question. So I don't know that much about the engineering of network switches per se. As a matter of fact, I know very little. But a lot of what I've done in my system is to try to control noise. And there are products to do it. I think that some of the things that gentleman did, I'm not a big believer in cable risers and fuses. I don't even know what an audio crystal is, other than putting it under your tongue and tripping. I don't know. And the reason I say that, and I keep repeating myself, and I hate doing it, I think most people are unable and uneducated in how to use their equipment to obtain the best result. You can get significantly better sound in almost any room with almost any equipment if you know how to set it up, if you understand the basic physics of how a speaker works in a room, and that you have learned the difference between hearing and listening.
You know what?
We're talking about network switches here, though. And again, like you're talking about the noise, and I'm like, yeah, man, any noise you can get out of your system, get it out of your system.
No, I'm not saying a network switch is a big thing. I think that I'm not going to fight over whether it is or it isn't. I think of the list of all the components in the world, these are the things that are down the bottom. Okay? Preamps, amplifiers, speakers, turntables, DACs, high-end cables all make a bigger difference than a network switch.
But you specifically asked me the pointed question: do I believe there could be noise on a network cable? Of course, that is implying that noise could, in any way, shape, or form, interfere with an error-corrected packetized data signal. It could not, and so it's a distraction. Is there noise on the line? Yes. That noise can, if that noise affected the signal, if your sync device got a packet and went, there is noise in this packet, it's going to go back and be like, I need that packet again. There was some noise in this one, right? That's how error correction works. That's how packetized data works, and that's why I say, like, it's a distraction to ask if there's noise on the line, because it doesn't matter. So what difference is the audiophile switch going to make? Okay. I understand your point. You're saying it's way down on the list, but I'm asking, even if you're saying it's a half a percent difference, where could that difference possibly come from? That's the question I want somebody to explain to me.
Well, here's the thing,
I'm not an engineer. I can't answer it, but there are plenty of people that sell product that would argue with you.
But there's something here that we are not taking into consideration.
The operative point being, Elliot, they're selling product, so they're in it to make money.
Here's the thing, though. Like, there is something that I think we're not seeing here, and Dennis continues to reinforce it, which is Dennis comes with all his explanation, right? Scientific explanation of the data, package data, right, through wires, and how can a network switch essentially change this, right? So in his mind, there is no explanation. Therefore, he shuts off completely to the possibility that it may make a difference when he listens. So I understand that. I understand his point of view. Just like saying, I saw myself change a wire, so therefore what I'm about to hear will be a different sound, right? You are already preconditioned by thinking that I just sat down, swapped cables, and now for sure it's going to sound different. It's going to make a difference. So I understand, though, but it's the same thing, kind of like what you're doing, Dennis, which is you are trying to explain that to yourself, it shouldn't make a difference.
Dennis,
because
let
of
me
X,
ask
Y,
you,
and Z.
So let's do a blind listening test, Jay.
Okay, fair. Let me ask Dennis, have you ever actually had an occasion to compare a basic network switch to some vastly, seemingly ridiculously complicated network switch, totally A/B comparison in your own system in a relaxed, leisurely way?
Yeah, I mean, I right now I'm using just like Asus mesh network systems, but I used to have, I brought home from work with me a crazy enterprise grade Cisco network solution.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
I believe one of these switches is probably, I don't know, $4,000, something like that.
But Dennis, it's not an audiophile switch. That's the problem.
Danny, by the way, that's not what we're talking about. You're talking about comparing two different brands of frozen pizza. It's not the same thing.
But
Okay.
why? Why is it not the same thing?
Elliot, you're so
Dennis,
full of shit, man. It's hilarious.
I'm not full of shit. I can't answer your question. It's not in my pay grade. I'm not an engineer. Okay.
So
why
that's
do you
the
feel so
problem. That's
passionately that
exactly
it is
the
true then?
problem that I've been
You're-
saying. Get a fucking
You're
engineer
passionate
on
that
the
it
show
can't
and he'll explain
possibly
it
work.
to you.
And I'm telling you that I don't agree with you.
But-
Okay. You can make the same argument, okay, that there's no difference. Sorry. I believe there is a difference. Now, I'm not saying that buying a X $1,000 network switch is going to give everybody a Woody. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I am saying that audible differences could be heard. I don't know why. I can't answer the question. I don't know.
Do a blind test. Let's do a blind test.
Let's do it. When I
Can I
have my
make you
rooms ready,
blind
let's do
first?
it.
Can I blind
You know
you
what,
first?
Jay? Jay, I tell you what,
out.
I'll take you up on that. Hang on, Elliot.
Okay.
Shush. Jay, I'll take you up on that.
Done.
We're gonna do a show in your new listening space.
Done.
We're gonna have a third person unaffiliated with us.
Yep.
Switch stuff out, and we'll see how the four of us or five of us with guests are gonna score.
Done. I
Fine.
love to, because you know
fine.
what? These tiny changes that we're talking about, that cable lifters make, and the fuses and all of that, most of these things make a change, not the same as changing a loudspeaker, but they make a change. The problem is your biggest enemy is your room. When you don't have that quietness and that space, that leaves nothing to chance.
Can I
Okay,
give you an
it's
example?
harder. It's
Can I
much
give you an
harder to hear these
example?
nuances.
I think these little changes and stuff, I don't really care about. I really don't. I have a customer that I installed.
Do you not care about them because they don't make you a lot of money, or why?
No,
Why is it that you don't
no.
care about them?
I try not to sell my customers bullshit, okay? And I don't want to sell them 75 different kinds of rock salt. I just don't believe it. Spend your money in something good. I don't believe you should spend $30,000 on a rack, $10,000 on cable lifters and nothing. So I have a guy, I did a job in Parkland. He has a nice system. I'm not going to mention the product, not important. But when he did the system, I gave him, in order to fit into the budget what we had left, entry-level high-end cables, okay? He's had it for a couple of months. He asked me about making an improvement. I had some stuff here that I thought he might be interested in, and I went over and I put it in his house, and I installed it, and I left. Okay. He comes back to me 2 days later and he said, that is the largest improvement I have ever heard in anything in audio in my life. Okay. Now, there was a big difference in the price, but it wasn't because of the price. There was no pressure. He didn't have to buy it. He could have returned it. He could have done anything. Okay. So I think there is big differences in components, and I call cables components. Accessories or tchotchkes or whatever you want to call it, you know, if I would have a hard time convincing anybody that a cable lifter is going to make a dramatic change.
Gentlemen, this was
Jay has the last word.
Gentlemen, this was done through a $375,000 speaker, by the way. So okay. Once again, we're talking about crazy gear here. The system that Elliot is talking about. So,
okay.
That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. That's
the last word. Let's move on to the music segment. Danny, you got it.
Sure, Danny.
You're all verschmutzed. I'm just kidding. Hey, this was great. Dennis, I'm totally on your side. Look, let me just say this. because I'm sure some of the people watching are like, he's a science denier. No, I'm not at all. I believe that cables do make a difference. Do I believe
only in multi-channel?
Of course, Elliot had to say that. Yes, Elliot. Multi-channel is better than stereo. Boom.
Okay.
Verschmutzt.
Only if you sit on a network switch with audio crystals.
With fairy dust sprinkled on it. Anyway, all right, music segment. Listen, this is the here's what trips me out. And Dennis, you're gonna get a kick out of this since you're new to the show. Here's what trips me out. Every single show, this is not a sixth show. I can't wait to read the comments. There's always one or two or three guys that are like, hey, great show. Get the music segment out of there. I want more audiophilia. It's like, dude, we're doing all this in the spirit of listening to music, in the spirit of connecting with music. If you're not into music, you're on the wrong channel.
Why is it the science wackos that are the ones that get that, and the spooky feely guys are like, get your music out of here?
Dan is correct. We get a lot of those kinds of comments. When we get those comments, they say stuff like, we're at least supposed to pretend as audiophiles we care about the music, so I love the music segment.
Heck yeah. All right, so we got two bangers coming up. First one, Nenad Vasilic. Gentleman born in Niš, Serbia, former Yugoslavia. By the way, Constantine the Great was also born in Niš, and of course, he of the great fame who brought Christianity to the Roman Empire back in the 3rd century. But back to Nenad Vasilic, great bass player, double bass player, very, very well recorded. It's extremely spacious. Fantastic holographic imaging. If you want to try to set up your speakers, which I believe the speakers and the room are the two single biggest contributors to what your system is going to sound like.
100%, yes.
Period. Yep. Everything else, the only thing that comes close to it is going to be your analog setup, your cartridge, and your turntable, tone arm, and all that. Everything else is secondary, tertiary, and so on and so forth down the line. But anyway, if you want to listen to your speakers, and if you're having problem getting them to image right or getting depth in your SoundStage, this would be a fantastic record to try out and play. Of course, it's also available in digital form. And listening to that bass, it's really, really good and beautiful music, by the way. Next up.
Well, can I just say, I thought that the tracks there would be great for setting up subwoofers. And I actually enjoyed one track in particular, Jutros mi je ruza prokvetala. Obviously, I'm a Serbian native speaker.
Can you say that again, Ron?
Jutros mi je ruža procvetala.
That's what he said.
That basically means this morning my rose bloomed. Or my rose bloomed.
You don't give a damn what Jay and I thought?
Yeah, go ahead. You're next.
Okay, hang on. And then there's one more guy. There's one more record. This is absolutely so. If you're into soundtrack,
no, but Danny, let's get Elliot and Jay's thoughts.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, yeah.
I'm a
big. They actually listened to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, not only have I listened to it, but as you know, I'm a big fan of streaming, and I came across Nenad. I can't pronounce his name. A long time ago, and although I like what you picked, it's not my favorite record of his. I mean, he has an album called Bass and Strings, which I really, really like. And you're right, the recordings are quite excellent. If you like the bass, I mean, this is what this guy does. He plays lead on the bass, and for those people that like it or like Bromberg or some of the other people, he's really, really excellent, and I highly recommend the album.
Thank you.
Hey, Danny, can I do one, man? Can I butt in? Can the guest butt into the segment and just be like, hey, man, I get to do one too?
Heck yeah.
I just unwrapped this for you guys, but I've been listening to it on streaming. This is Hani Arani's nonfiction.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing, guys. Hani Arani is a Polish pianist, keyboard player, does a lot of prepared piano. I'm utterly obsessed with her. Oftentimes she will play like piano, and she will have synthesizers behind her and beside her, and she'll play all of them. If you're just into beautiful, like, God, who would you, Danny? Who would you compare her to? I mean, I'm guessing there's elements of like Philip Glass. There's elements of like Brian Eno to it, but it's also filtered through a very, very different, very feminine sensibility. And it's just, you want to talk about sense of space. You want to talk about textures and detail. God, is just an utter treat for the ears and the brain. So Hani Irani nonfiction. That's my recommendation.
Love it. Great recommendation. And thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you brought something with you, Dennis. It's fantastic.
Well, I live here, so it's yeah.
Jay, did you have any thoughts on it?
I didn't get to listen to it.
There's always one in the crowd. Although, Jay, I will say, and audience, please leave a comment if this in fact resonates with you. Jay, I love what you're growing here, buddy.
Cool.
It's looking very distinctive.
We're working on it. I don't grow a lot, but it's going to get probably a little thicker. But yeah,
you got to give him a break. He doesn't have any sound rooms, so
exactly.
I know. Recording in a car or whatever.
I know. Hey, and Sonic's audio. We're gonna drop the link to both records in the description box below. But I can also do it in the comment section after I'm done. Next up is, as I was saying a moment ago, if you guys are into soundtracks and classical music, Japanese composer, conductor, pianist Joe Hisaishi, absolutely brilliant. He's been active for, 50 years now, going on 50 years. Beautiful double album. So this is actually compositions that he did for all of the Studio Ghibli movies and shorts. And Studio Ghibli is a Japanese animation house that has been doing all kinds of animation work and cartoons and such for the Japanese market, or internationally, that is, over the last, 3-4 decades, I would say. I think they started in the early 80s. But if you're looking for like really nice symphonic arrangements that are not particularly related to classical music, more like, the sort of new age realm, with some tie into classical, of course. But this is absolutely fantastic. Very well recorded on Deutsche Grammophon. You can, of course, stream it as well. And I will drop a link to this in the comments below. But yeah, great recommendation. Beautiful atmospheric sound, lots of depth, lots of layers, and so on and so forth.
I liked two of the tracks, Merry-Go-Round of Life and Ponyo's Sisters Lend a Hand. I thought it was like nice, lively, and fun classical music.
Absolutely good stuff.
I thought the recording was good. The music doesn't really float my boat. But I wanted to say something for one guy that asked a question. Take a listen to Willie Nelson Teatro. It's a really great album, really well recorded, and Willie at his best.
Any final thoughts, Dennis?
No, I appreciate you guys having me. I appreciate the conversation. It's been fun.
Thank you for joining us. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can keep doing this and having other great guests like Dennis. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Dennis, thanks so much for joining, man. Really great to have you on.
I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Dennis.
All right.
See you guys.
Bye.